Wait, can you take it off and then we'll talk about it when you put it on?
Sure.
All right, cool.
You're so smoothly
how is your hair
agreeable.
still?
Because it's got fucking
dude.
buffalo.
That's impressive.
It is impressive.
Crew.
Yeah. Yikes.
It's like, Ted, what type of gel
ready?
do you
ready?
use? Gorilla Glue?
You ready?
That was awesome.
That was pretty awesome.
Ready?
Actually,
Welcome to the.
No.
I really.
That's
we
how
need
he
to
does it.
discuss
Here we go. We're starting.
this later.
We're starting. It'll happen. It'll happen.
I hurt your hand. My face
What's
is
up,
so
Crashers?
Oh, Betty.
It's Order Clark.
Oh, Betty.
If you're a boy, I'd kiss you. All right. Let's get serious. So what's our topic?
Actually, that's up to you.
Yeah.
You want to talk about this new awesome thing you're doing, or you want to talk about wedding planning? What do you think?
Or a combo.
What are you excited about? We can talk about both. Why don't we start out with
What if she's like totally something different?
What? She's like, I'm trying to talk about Club Risk or Risque. Or
I was
whatever the
gonna
fuck
say
it is.
it's definitely risque.
Club Risque. I was gonna stop halfway through that, and then I was like, nah, I'll just
Wait, is
Go
it
through.
Club
is it
Risque.
boudoir or is it boudoir?
Oh God,
both.
stop.
It's boudoir. BOODWA.
No, it's not.
Maybe
So
an H on
so
the
the
end,
word
maybe
is
an H on the
in
end.
English, in American English, boudoir. In French, it's boudoir. Okay, we don't pronounce shit the same way all the time. It's like Italians who pronounce capicola, gabagool, but don't have an Italian accent the rest of the time. Why,
don't
when you
know if
name
it's the
certain
same.
foods, it is. When you name,
Do you say
can't.
fiance?
You can't name
That sounds pretty
certain
French.
that has an accent over the e. That has specific things that tell you to pronounce it that way. Built into the word.
Whatever, you public schooler.
I'm just saying. Ted did tell me he was
Syntax
super smart because he was
matters,
homeschooled.
okay?
Ted's dad has a handlebar mustache. He would side with boudoir.
Right, I'm
Pretty
sure he
sure.
would. My point is, on the topic of boudoir, I pronounce the word the way it's spelled. I don't have an accent on specific words.
All
I
right,
have the same
all right,
accent
all
all
right.
the time.
Sit down and eat your gabagool.
I'm just saying. I'll get off my soapbox now, but that's how I feel about things.
All right.
Noted.
In case
say
you
sauce
didn't
or
know,
gravy?
I am a boudoir photographer. That's my main thing. That
And I'm a wedding photographer.
you're a joke. What's going on, Crashers? This is Tommy. We got Ted here. We
What's
got
up?
Giggles McGee over there. Fucking Mike. What are you laughing about?
We
All
went
right.
from like super high energy to that was like
Bleh.
Welcome to the wedding.
We can try it again. You want to try it again?
news.
The weather's been kind of dreary.
The weather
Today
was
on-
still
It got really
there.
serious.
Jazz. All right,
All right,
let's
so
get,
no,
let's
let's
get
roll
serious.
with that. That's cool.
So we got Tom, Ted, Mike, your peeps, your hosts, and then we got our awesome guest here. Why don't you introduce yourself? Do you want
Oh no, you want words? Okay.
words are important.
You
I
know-
usually introduce myself by dance.
you know, because that I just feel like the movement, you know,
Right,
really
right,
does
right.
it. Really
So
just,
you're the artist formerly known as.
you know, pretty much, you know.
Yeah.
It's
So
like my dad.
That was weird. That was a weird
yeah,
dab.
it was a little weird,
Right.
awkward.
Right.
I'm Kia from KMT Event Group. I am a wedding planner, designer, production master, all of the
Extraordinaire.
things. There you
Dope,
go.
dope master extraordinaire. I like it. Ted, why don't you go ahead and dab for us?
Ted's dabs flow.
Ted does a dad
I'm
dab.
at one with you.
That is a dead dab.
Dad dab. Dope. Awesome. All right, so event design, wedding planner, all these different terms. Do these terms mean different things, or is it all the same thing?
Nah, I mean they are pretty different. So wedding planners plan the event, so it's like more like timelines and logistics, like floor plans and where the outlets are, and you know all of the nuances. Designer is more aesthetic, so
Okay.
that's pretty much what things look like. So if you think of an architect and then like an interior designer, like
Oh,
the
shit.
architect actually builds the place, and then the interior designer actually, you know, makes it look pretty. And so that's planner versus designer, and then production is the person who puts it together, and that's like construction. So
Awesome.
That's pretty cool.
That's amazing, and it makes a ton of sense, and I never would have thought of it that way.
yeah,
That's awesome. I learned something already.
I done learned it right now.
Sometimes my brain don't work so good. That's awesome. So what's your favorite part of it? You do all of it?
I mean, I do it all. I am a designer by nature. I love all things design. For me, the luxuries and the details. So I really enjoy, you know, just putting things together and just, you know, orchestrating all of the things. And so I think that today my role is a little bit different because I kind of am, overseer of all these things,
Nice.
but my heart is always with the elements.
That's cool. That's cool.
So we're going to talk about your new cool idea that you're coming out with, but I'm fascinated with like your story of how you got here.
Oh, God.
So why don't we rewind and talk about that before you were wedding planner and
Take
stuff
it
like that,
back,
because it's
back.
so cool.
Back in the day.
It is the most non-linear story that
But it makes sense because it builds to what we're going to talk about.
yeah, I mean, I'll bring it,
Bring it back.
I'll bring it back. So I pretty much started out in politics. I worked on Capitol Hill. I worked for Congresswoman Clark. I worked in legislative law. How I got there is I had a nonprofit organization. It was called Dare to Dream Big. And the idea is that, 21st century education, really kind of pushing forward with entrepreneurship, civic responsibility, and creativity as equal to academics. And so that's really what, launched me into the political path. And my idea was like the greatest good for the greatest number and how do we, make a difference and all that fun stuff. So did that for about a year.
That's
and
awesome.
nothing happens on Capitol Hill. So I felt that, I was putting a lot out and I wasn't getting anything back. And so I decided to try fundraising. And so I worked for Marjorie Margolis. Her son's married to Chelsea Clinton. And so I was deputy finance director for this campaign. And that's where I started planning events through fundraising. And so I was looking for a venue that could hold, like 400 people. And then I found this venue. And while we didn't have the event there, I had a relationship with that venue manager. And then after we lost the election, he offered me a job. It was super random. My dad had just died at that point, so I just wanted to just kind of take a break from the whole political scene. And so I was like, I'll give it a whirl. And I love projects. So I started working at this event space, and, the owner kind of left. So he showed me the event space, and he was like, okay, I'll be back. And then I didn't see him for a year. So
A year.
So I
Wow.
pretty much built this event space up. I, did the website, I made the menu, I hired staff, I trained people, I did the sales, I worked the events, I put the tables down, as everything. I did
That's
all
crazy.
it was insane. And so, fast forward, he comes back and he's like, before they were doing mostly corporate and fundraising event, he was pissed. He was like, why would you bring all these weddings here? Like, I hate brides. Like, they're so needy. Well, corporate events are very different. It's like a room rental. They come in, they do
Right.
their own stuff, and
And
they
they're
leave.
gone.
And so
Right.
he was pissed because I booked about 50 of them. So,
Nice.
so that didn't work out on my end just because, he and I weren't a good fit. So at
Right.
that point, I was like, I'm just going to start my own company.
Yep.
And I reached out to my past brides. They sent me a bunch of business. And so, that's pretty much how I transitioned from, planning weddings from the venue point of view, and then to planning weddings directly with brides. And so,
That's awesome.
yeah, it's been quite the journey.
That sounds like it. Well,
So-
you guys heard that before, right? I'd never heard that. That's,
yeah, we
pretty
talked
amazing. You guys talked about it earlier. That's so politics to weddings. It doesn't seem like there's like a clear line there, but are there similarities?
Yeah, so really, my political path was my passion for people. And so my wedding planning path is my passion for design. And so under the KMT experience, they intersect. And so, now my team, and, I say this 1,000 times, an incredible event requires an incredible team. And so our KMT I Do crew, our all-star vendors, this is my opportunity to kind of, actualize my passion for people and creating that sort of atmosphere that I wish that I could have created in Congress and in my political arena. I create under this umbrella. And so at our showroom we have about 25 vendors that we work with, and so it's such a great opportunity because now I can be that hands-on and I can create, I'm essentially creating opportunities for our vendors to basically grow their businesses and expand on their services and just be their best. And so that's something that I'm really, really passionate about, something I'm really proud of. And so it's something I'm looking forward to, getting the ball rolling on.
That's
so.
awesome. That's amazing.
That's awesome. So just for people to kind of clarify that they're watching. So we met you by doing event planning. You've been doing that for a while now. Now this new thing you're doing, can you summarize that? We're going to talk a little bit more about it a little bit later, like more deeper level, but can you summarize a little bit about what your plans are, what you're doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, KMT Event Group is, we offer a full range of planning, production, and design services even coordination services. And so in our design services, it's a very custom sort of process where we sit with our clients and we basically, put together a design board and style sessions and really help them to culminate a design that makes sense for them and their wedding. And so we did that about 30 or so times last year, and probably 30 year before that. And so we've done it a lot. And so, where the KMT collection showroom comes in is that this is essentially a condensed version of what we've already been doing, and we wanted to be able to expand our services to offer this to more and more brides. And so it is it's expensive to hire a designer and to have someone to help you, and a lot of brides see that as a luxury, and it shouldn't be a luxury to be able to have the day of your dreams. And so we wanted to make it accessible where people could just literally walk off the street at any time during our business hours and point and pick. And so we say you preview, personalize, purchase, and party. And so the
awesome.
space is a communal space where brides can come in and they can talk about all the woes of wedding planning and wedding design, and it's a one-stop shop. And so you can come in and you can get your hair and makeup trial, you can come in and you can check out videographers, you can come in and you can check out photographers, you can come in and get your flowers, you can come in and do everything related to your wedding. So the reason people hire a wedding planner, or at least want to hire a wedding planner even if they don't, is because there are so many moving parts in planning a wedding. And so most millennials work while they're planning the wedding, so who really wants to take on a second full-time job of planning a wedding? And if they are have to, they may not get the results that they want. And so it's a lot of time, it's a lot of money, it's a lot of energy, and so we want to make sure they're getting what they want. And so how can we streamline this process? How can we make it more convenient, more easy? How can we make it more fun? And so that's the KMT collection showroom. That's what's born from that sort of need.
It's funny you say that. So last episode we talked to some people from venue staff, sales staff, and their thing was seeing clients come in who are stressed out and tired and like having to do all this stuff, and I kind of reflected back to my wedding where I had the help of the venue owners at the time, but that's kind of what they did. They just planned everything for me, and I didn't stress about it at all because I had somebody to do that for me. And now most venues do not have that, right? So that's where a planner comes in, right? That's where that just ease of going forward happens.
Yeah.
As far as from the vendor side, what is the benefit? So if I'm a videographer, if I'm a photographer, what's the benefit of me partnering with a wedding planner? Aside from the obvious like referrals, though, what's the ease of use part for us? Because like I haven't done it almost at all. Maybe once or twice I've worked with a planner, but not much at all.
Yeah, so we are basically a liaise between the client and the vendor. So under like our planning services, we basically. Brides for the most part have never planned a wedding before, so they have no real sense of logistics. They have no real sense of timeline. So they go on Pinterest, they see some things that they like, and then they have, sometimes some really unrealistic expectations. And so our job as the planner is to say, hey, this is feasible or this is not feasible. And so it's just like someone who's building a house for the first time. They're like, oh, I want the window to face this way, but there are certain like foundation issues and there are certain things this way. And so a bride never looks at they're like, oh, I want to take pictures at 20 different places. Well, your planner will say, hey, that's not going to all happen in one second, and just little nuanced details
you're getting married in the winter and you can't have a 7:00 sunset ceremony.
Right.
How dare you say I can't?
I've had so many,
I will have my sunset ceremony in December.
and it's about relationships too. And so when we're planning a wedding, we spend over 200 hours planning this wedding, so we have a relationship with our clients that sometimes you might have talked to. And a lot of our millennials, let's keep it real, people don't like to talk on the phone. They want to text, they want to they don't really want to meet you in person. And so at the level of comfort isn't always there. So I'll have brides who will tell me something that they don't feel comfortable telling their photographer or telling their videographer. And this is such an important thing, because if you're not clearly articulating what your expectation is, then there may be a miscommunication, and that doesn't mean that the videographer or the photographer necessarily was wrong, but that means that they didn't have a clear understanding of what your expectation is and what you were actually looking to do. And so we really streamline that process through our like photo packets, our video detail packets, by really, you know, specifying, hey, these are the things that we want to get captured. These are, you know, this is the shot. This is the, you know, making sure that any props that they want to have. So, you know, they'll see pretty stationary pictures on Pinterest, and they think that the videographer or the photographer is just going to show up with a tray, a jewelry tray, to have their stuff in like that, when it doesn't work that way. And then they get these pictures back and they're like, this isn't what I wanted. And it's like, well, obviously you can't, the client doesn't ever want to be wrong, but like if they can't read what's in your mind, so, you know, while a photographer or videographer may have their own artistic approach, you still have to give them some sort of direction in terms of, if, you know, and I feel like there's a lot of like planning by abdication. They're like, oh, this vendor, just do your thing, and then they are pissed when it doesn't come together the way that they saw it in their mind. So
I think it's a good point. So for a bride or something like that to go, if as the wedding planner, if you can say, hey, you can tell me anything, it's something that they may look at their photographer and say like, I don't want to hurt their feelings, but I really don't like what they did. Mm-hmm. Can you talk to them? Like, it'll be easier for them to tell you than it would be to tell that person directly. It's not something I had thought about before. That makes a lot of sense.
And it's also for the vendors, because obviously if you have another resource, you can never have enough hands at a wedding. I don't, you know, and the bigger the wedding, the more hands that you can use. And so, you know, even on the vendor side, we're an advocate for our vendors. So, you know, sometimes I have, you know, brides, couples, you know, who don't have a realistic expectation. They may not have the trust level that they, you know, want to have with the photographer. So they're like, well, I'm paying you have to do it this way, when it just literally does not work that way. So then when we say, okay, no, it really just doesn't work that way, then they're like, okay, he wasn't trying to get over on me, or you know, that wasn't an actual thing. And
or maybe it was, but now they're in cahoots.
Yeah. And just think about, you know, as a photographer, you know, yes, there are certain things, and videographers, you know, that you are going to be doing, but it's nice to have a wedding planner who's already, you know, made the timeline and given it to you and said, okay, here's where the first location is going to be, here's what they're thinking. And so there's just like, it kind of just cuts down on your workload, because, you know, now you have the appropriate probing questions, you have the appropriate, you know, answers, you know, already kind of set up for you. We are, you know, ahead of time in terms of making sure that, you know, the meeting, we schedule a meeting, we send a meeting agenda. That's something that most brides don't do. They're like, hey, can we get on a call? And you don't even know. But I like to give them time to, you know, think about and discuss and all those things before we actually jump together. And so we really just tried to, again, just streamline the process and make it as simple for all parties involved. And so for me, I really enjoy, you know, working with, you know, our vendors and our, you know, our vendors who have that same sort of professionalism. But, you know, sometimes people get busy, and it's just nice to have an extra set of hands to just jump in and make sure that things go smoothly. So
that's awesome.
And one of the things I love about the whole entire concept here is, like, for my work, I'm a wedding photographer. That's what I do. Mm-hmm. For my clients, I think it's easy for them to look at my website and say, yes, I like that photo, or no, I don't like that style. But for like a florist or an invitation person or decorations, like, that's kind of hard to do on the internet alone. So I feel like having this spot here eliminates them having to go to 5 different vendors just
after
to see
work,
the physical stuff
on a weekend. So imagine just that's literally 10 different trips that you would have to make. You would to go to the station, or to go to a DJ showcase, to go to, you know, the photographer studio, to go to the videographer studio, to go to the florist studio, to go to the venue. So, and
in the words of the famous internet, ain't nobody got time for that.
Ain't nobody got time for that. So our goal is to save our clients time. It's to save them money. It's to reduce stress, and it's to bring the fun and the enjoyment back to the process. And so we all, you know, I'm sure all of our parents have told us it's all in the process. And so the wedding itself is 5 or 6 hours, you know what I mean? And so, but the process is up to a year, you know, sometimes more. And so, you know, if it's this daunting thing where it's nothing but meetings and, you know, timelines and meal counts and this person and that, then it becomes this tedious thing where when you lead up, you know, I can't tell you how many people have, you know, called us, you know, leading up to the wedding. They say, oh my God, I'm just so over it. Like, I don't want to make any more decisions. And they feel isolated because, you know, not all the time, but for the most part, you know, groom is like, you just pick whatever. And so then
do you, boo-boo. Do you.
So then what happens is that, that. You know, you got mom over here who wants one thing, you got your friends over here who have an opinion, and then you're just you're isolated and you're overwhelmed and you're already doing a bunch of stuff on your own personal time. And so again, we want to alleviate that. And because, you know, obviously we did over 50 weddings last year, over 50 the year before that, like this is and that's our cap is 50. We really try to stop there, but you know that means that we had to turn down so many people who were reaching out for help. And so our thing was
you at your level of your comfortable level of service you can provide,
that we can maintain the KMT experience. And so you know, for us, we were like, you know, we want to be able to be a resource and we don't want it to be a luxury. We the same way that I love going to, you know, Michael's or AC Moore and I just can go and grab what I need and I can see it and I can, you know, go from there. I want people to be able to have the same thing. If you're making welcome bags, I want you to be able to walk in. That's no such thing that you can walk in and pick out things for your welcome bags, throw them in. You got 50 people coming. You know what I mean? Like that's not a thing. And so we want to again just we want to simplify the process.
Right. Nonsense just happened, and you kept going. That was amazing. Like, that was you really.
You guys
you really
are
were solid. That was
10 pointed.
so before you do that, people say about millennials, and I've heard this recently, and I think there's another hobby of mine which might sound ridiculous that doesn't really apply to this, but tabletop gaming and like board games is making a comeback, right? And there's yes, it is. No, the industry has grown. It has grown tenfold over the last few years, and people
so
say
it went from 1 to 10.
No.
It's growing because you're buying all the games.
That's right. No, so that's not true at all. But
300%
so no, the point is that one of the reasons they're saying that is because our generation is more into tactile experiences, right? So there's my point. Thanks for your input, motherfuckers.
I
Eat it.
Are you good on that?
So more of a tactile experience. So people like to be hands-on. People like to be able to pick up the thing and look at it and say like, "This is what I want." And I feel like this. Nope, shut up. I feel like the situation you have here and the idea you have here is conducive to that, and that may be a huge selling point for you.
I think you're onto something with the idea about millennials, and let's say there's something they might not feel comfortable asking Ted or us about, because it kind of brings it back to that, like not when you're a kid, but let's say, I don't know, you're afraid to talk to your teacher or your doctor. It was always easier you have your parents do it, right? So having like that intermediary, like you could be like, I don't want to offend my photographer, so I don't want to say this to him. Could you say it? Like, actually, that's kind of cool. Like, I think that's really, I never thought of that. My brain don't work so good.
So the tactile thing is actually really a great idea because back in 2000,
I just said that.
Back in
We just had this whole conversation.
I'm adding on.
Oh, you're just saying. You're re-saying. It sounds better when you say it.
Better.
It sounds better when you say it.
Yeah.
So go ahead. Say what I said.
Steve Jobs came back to Apple
back
at like 99, 2000, right? Kind of changed the company, got rid of 80% of the products they made because they weren't doing the best at those. They were just things they made. Also came out with the idea for the physical retail stores because at the time you could only buy an Apple product via a catalog.
Right.
You call the number, you say that I want this, here's my information, send them a check or whatever. And people ridiculed the idea of having a physical store. They said no one's going to come to that. Well, obviously that blew up, and it's a huge industry that they made for themselves by having these retail stores. And if you've ever been in one, like they have an open area where you can go in and touch all the products physically, and it changed a lot for them because people could physically touch it and see it before they made a decision to buy it.
And what you say there about all the products is it's really like the same phone 50 times.
Exactly.
I don't know.
Did super clear. It's one phone. He said instead of making 80 products, we're gonna make one phone.
Started with one.
Forever.
Did we say
the same one phone?
Did we
no changes?
Clearly say that yet though? That what you're building is like a place for people to come and literally walk through weddings.
And what I think is important is we're here right now,
and
we're
also
on location,
and furthermore, and on top of that,
this is where we're at.
Aside.
And
statistically speaking.
No, it wouldn't be politics aside because we talked about politics.
Yeah,
and
we
did. And it actually makes sense to include here, so don't put them aside.
Right.
Now rephrase what I just said.
I love.
Nope.
Circling back to weddings.
Oh, we were gonna make fun of things. Here we go. That's dope. That's dope.
Mike's face.
What was the thought process when you made that?
I like to jar people a little bit, and they're like, "What is that? Why does he do that?" Oh, I get it. He's a photographer. I get it. My wife rolled her eyes.
Read a book.
That makes sense.
Brilliant woman.
There's someone that used to do that in history. P.T. Barnum. He wrote a book called
Power of
Outrageous Marketing. That's what you're doing right there, Ted. See? Outrageous.
Outrageous. That's one word for it.
Crossing the chasm. I like it.
That's right.
That's
see,
disruptive.
Causing a schism. Yikes.
Furthermore,
It's a strong
That's
choice
such.
of color. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I know you don't like orange, so
No, that's better than orange. That's definitely better than orange.
He is literally the most thoughtful person, even in
I didn't want to offend him.
yeah. You can
Wait.
offend no
Ted
one.
picked our
That's not
marketing
true.
materials the one time. He made them, and he made them.
He made
them.
bridal show last year.
He made them orange, and I'm like, why the fuck would you choose orange?
Wait.
I was like, hey, let's not. Hey, wait, real quick. I just thought of something. We didn't book a single client at the show last year.
Yes, we did.
yeah, we did. We're
Not,
going
no,
to.
what I say at the show last year.
At
We
the
didn't
show.
book any clients at the show last year with our orange materials, but this year we booked a ton with our new nice blue material. So let's talk about professionalism at weddings, because what I truly applaud you on. So even just like the meeting agendas and stuff like that, I come from an environment that is very structured and corporate and procedurally driven and stuff like that. And it's very non-creative and very, like I said, procedurally driven, things like that. But there are pieces to that efficiency that we could use in our industry, and it seems like you're trying to bring that stuff with the agendas, with that stuff. It's like, let's be concise, let's make it easy on you. That stuff's there, process for a reason, right? It seems like you're bringing that. So speaking of professionalism, at
Wait,
an event,
Wait, but I just actually want to touch on
No,
that
go ahead, please
because I literally, so I sent Ted a little PDF, and I am, because my background is, my degree is in business, and so I do use a very corporate sort of structure with we use a task and communication log with our clients, so we log every call, we log every vendor
that's
interaction.
fantastic.
I found a typo on that, by the way.
Oh, you son of a! No.
Oh,
Wow.
I will.
All right,
I will
Dick.
let.
Ted, you are.
Yeah,
Ted,
Get
do me-
out.
Damn,
Do me
you
a favor.
homeschooled,
Yes.
Damn,
That-
damn it,
what-
homeschool.
I think we have rules on
I
the
just
show, and
ruined
one of
it.
them
I'm
is don't be
sorry.
a
I'm
dick to
sorry.
the clients or to the guests. Don't be a dick to the
what
guests.
you just did there is socially unacceptable.
Right. So now that you know, when we have a guest here speaking about their business, don't fucking correct them.
It was helpful.
We'll cut-
We'll
we'll cut
definitely
this part
circle
out.
back
Highlight it for you.
and
We're not
thank
cutting
you.
this out.
We'll cut this out.
But we make
This
it
is why
fun.
Ted has bad reviews.
Oh, stop.
that
Too
hurts.
soon?
That
Too soon?
At least I have clients that give me reviews.
Oh,
But I do, so I don't get it.
I mean, you talk about the power plant more than weddings, so
That's not true.
like even in our corporate sort of structure with all of our PowerPoints, like I put like little like a ring emoji for our proposal. Like even we made like our proposal. We like to make it fun, so we look at it as an opportunity to be a hybrid, to be able to have that same sort of structure that keeps us organized and that people feel comfortable using, but at the same time incorporating our personality. We literally call ourselves the Khaleesi's of KMT.
That's awesome. I like it.
But yeah, like incorporating our personalities and making it pretty and making it fun, so it doesn't feel like one more thing to do. So
That's awesome.
incorporating
Do you
personality.
do you have any corrections there?
No, she's wonderful.
Okay, I just want to check. Just want to make sure.
did she
You
use the
don't
right
smell it,
verbiage?
though.
Anymore? People
Circle
oh.
back to professionalism.
Yeah. So speaking of
We tuck our
professional,
shirts in.
so no, we don't. We don't. What do you mean we do?
We do.
We
He
don't.
doesn't.
You didn't
What?
for a
I
while.
always do.
is
You always say he
that
doesn't.
true?
So at a wedding, I come from an
Depends on the
environment
shirt.
that's very corporate. Here I go talking about the power plant again. Much to Ted's chagrin. You want to talk about your T-shirt at Apple? Well, you just talked about Steve Jobs. How are you going to hit on me about talking about my job?
That was my first time.
Be quiet.
Steve Jobs is the man.
Steve
Anyway,
Jobs is the
isn't he
man.
dead?
Rest in
One
peace.
shitty.
Why'd you have to?
Wait, no, I was like,
Spoiler alert. Don't talk about it. All right. So back at it. No, I come from a professional
you haven't
environment,
read the book.
and I say, like, if you're in a setting where you're
Spoiler
doing
alert.
something professional, you
Uh-huh.
should dress professionally, which means tuck your shirt in, make sure your clothes are ironed, make sure you're professional. Some people can get away with not tucking their shirt in, and I've come to that conclusion.
Okay.
I feel like at a wedding, I should be tucking my shirt in. It's a formal event. Tuck your fucking shirt in.
so we were wearing untucked shirts, meant to be untucked, like dress shirts called
Okay.
untucked shirts. It wasn't about that. It
There
was
were
about
a few times where they were not
someone
untucked shirts.
thinks polos should be tucked in.
I think you should tuck your polo in. If
I
you're at a
don't.
formal event, you're wearing khakis and
I
a polo,
kinda
tuck
like
your
it
fucking
tucked
shirt
in.
in.
I kind of think you should.
We do
tuck it
beach
in.
weddings.
Whoa.
You don't tuck it in.
Oh, tuck it in.
But wait, to Mike's point, I definitely think that it depends on where
Yeah.
you are.
You're not
So
in the city.
obviously-
That's
if
true,
you're-
but that's
if-
not the case.
But
all
you
the
don't
time.
want to show up
It's
in
the
like
case.
a
It's not the case all the
full suit and you're at
Right.
a beach wedding.
Right, I 100% agree.
It doesn't
100%
fit
agree.
where you're at.
What if
Tuck
you
your
bring
shirt
the
in a
sand
formal
with
event.
you in your camera bag with all your cameras and your
Well,
your
Mike
Ronin,
definitely does
then-
that.
Yeah, the beach is with you all the time.
I threw my cameras in the sand. Now there's sand in my cameras.
Well, my
Beach wedding.
Has anyone bought
wedding in
Ted's
Philly.
business book? My truck now a van.
My truck, now a van.
Sorry, that's from episode
That's
one.
episode one.
my truck now a van. I have to watch this episode.
We caught Ted in a lie.
Did you just say you didn't watch our episodes?
I did. I watched what Ted sent me, and I didn't. He sent me a teaser, and that's what I watched.
We joked about Ted
Really
being.
Was it the
Felsberg,
staring
that one.
contest? That's the best.
Oh, that's the teaser.
That's the one I saw. He didn't. I didn't know that there were more. I watched what you sent me. Sorry. I had very good attention to detail. If you would have said there's more, I would have watched more.
I didn't want to bore you.
But
They
wait.
weren't boring. I literally said, "Oh my god."
They're boring.
No, you sent it to me, and I didn't even email you
Hey,
back because
guys,
I was so excited.
keep
I
listening to
called
the
you.
show. That's
right,
I
that's right.
called
You did,
you
you
because
did.
it was
And I
so
saved your
great.
number on my phone. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Kia's calling me. Ah. It was great.
It was a great actually
It was fun.
engagement. I really liked it. We're like It
Fun.
It was a lot of
That
energy.
sounds fun.
It was high
Fun.
energy. It was high energy.
So back to
We're here.
professionalism. When I'm talking about, so I understand if you're at a beach wedding, there's
Okay.
different clothing protocols. But if we're at, say, a ballroom wedding and you're wearing a polo, I think you should tuck it in. That was my opinion.
Okay.
There are a million different people with a million different thought processes on that. To be honest, looking at the weddings we've done closer to the shore area of New Jersey and stuff like that, I don't see a lot of wedding planners out there. I have
that's
seen
true.
them mostly is in Philly and Atlantic City.
Yeah.
That's the two places I've seen it.
I think
Why do
that
you think that is?
yeah, I think that when an area is more or less saturated with venues, the venue becomes more of a one-stop shop. So
Right.
if you have a venue and there are no other venues around, then they usually will bundle services, and that coordinator will function as a planner. But because there are so many options in Philly, there are more room rentals than
Right.
anything. So they want to give people the flexibility of working within that sort of
That's really interesting.
whatever,
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah,
but
makes a lot of
so
sense.
it's just the same as if you are, in a more rural area, you'll have like a Walmart and everything's in there. Whereas
Yeah.
if you are in a more populated area, you'll have more chain stores and you'll have more options.
Right.
And so
That makes sense.
I guess at the
Makes a lot
beach
of
too,
sense.
they have people traveling in, so it's
Right.
like they have to.
So-
Well, you know what? It's funny. So you said it's room rentals. I'm trying to think back to like all the different Philadelphia weddings I've done, and Atlantic City weddings I've done, and that's pretty much what it is. A lot of them
Yeah.
are not venues. So like Ted and I did one at the National Jewish American Heritage
yeah,
Museum. That was cool. Like they don't have like a setup. I feel like people come in and set stuff up. Like you have to hire vendors
and
to come in
we've
and do everything.
done
right?
weddings there, and
Yep, it's great.
and
It's
it's
great.
a beautiful space, and,
Yeah,
but
awesome.
it's definitely that. And so even I think that there's a big misunderstanding in terms of what the actual role of an event coordinator from the venue is
Right.
versus the wedding planner. And because I was a venue coordinator,
Yeah.
not a wedding planner, I definitely understand, and I've worked outside of my role, and but a venue coordinator, if they go above and beyond that, they're being nice. But for the most part, the venue coordinator is, they're managing things on behalf of the venue. So their interest is the venue. They're making sure that the things that they were contracted to do, they do. But your venue coordinator isn't going to, find out where, call and see if your photographer's here on time. They're not going to find out where your license is or any permits that you need to go out and take your pictures. They're not going to, follow up with the DJ and make sure he plays the song
Right.
at the right particular point.
Or
They're
the
not
right,
going to,
or the right first dance song.
yeah, they're gonna turn the lights on. They're gonna make sure that the room is the appropriate temperature. If they cater in house, then they'll make sure that the food comes out as agreed. But they're not and for the most part, a lot of venue coordinators, they do tours of the venue on the actual day because it's easier to show the venue
Right.
when it's all
we've
set
seen
up.
that a
Right.
lot.
So if they're with another client and you have an issue, then they
Yeah,
aren't
right.
really available,
That's crazy.
to make sure that you have what you need. And there are just different roles. I mean, they do intersect, but they're the priority is different. And so when you have a wedding planner, that person is hired by you and their priority is you. When you have a venue coordinator, they're hired by the venue and their priority is the venue. And so
Right.
so yeah, that's pretty much the biggest difference.
No hula hoops on the dance floor. Right, that's the event coordinator.
yeah, we did have that one time.
That actually,
sounds fun.
it's strange. So from being an event coordinator, and you saying like their main concern is the venue, right? We've seen a couple different weddings where we've been at where the event coordinator like it was overtly like you could tell immediately that the venue was their priority and not the bride and groom at all.
Oh,
because
bunch.
it was like
that's a
crazy.
that's a ton of venues, and there's often again because brides don't go into the process knowing what questions to ask. There are always miscommunications in regards to what's allowed, what's not allowed, and a lot of times the venue doesn't act proactively in telling the brides what they can and cannot do. And so there are definitely times where they find out the day of and they've planned these things and they paid for things and they've had these visions in their mind, and they find out day of because the venue's like, oh no, we don't do this or they don't do that, but and they're like, you should have asked. But the thing is, like, you don't know what to ask if you're planning a wedding for the first time. And so
how many times have we been to a venue where when they do their sales process they see the whole venue and all these beautiful spots, and then they show up on their wedding and there's 6 weddings going on,
and they don't have access to those spots.
Literally 6.
Right.
They're assigned the back patio, not all these places they saw.
And that's not something that they would even know to ask, or if they say just little nuanced things where they're like, oh, you have a bridal attendant, but then the bridal attendant is also the maitre d', and so the bridal attendant's down on the floor plating salads, and you can't find her to get your key to the bridal suite, or what I mean? Like you don't know to ask, is that their only role, or what exactly, and so there are just nuances that unless you work in an industry that you just wouldn't know to ask. Or
I think even specifically as a wedding planner, because there's stuff that you just even mentioned that like we wouldn't know to ask, and we're in the industry. Like I wouldn't think to be like,
because it's not something we think about.
Like we don't even get into
I
that.
mean, because I worked at a venue, I know that that a lot of times every person is a cost, and so they are trying to control their overhead, so you will have people who do multiple jobs. And so even when I'm booking a venue, I always ask, hey, what's the server to ratio, like how many, because then when they tell you, oh, that's one server per 9 tables, you're like, bro, but then they charge you
3 hours,
but then they charge you per person for wine service, but then that there physically can be no way that you can serve enough wine, you know what I mean? But who would know that, like, if you weren't on the back end? And so my me being on the back end, from the venue perspective, it gives me a unique perspective because I already kind of know the tricks in the trade. And to be honest, if there's an issue the day of, the bride, you think about when you're in traffic and you're rushing somewhere and you're running late, like it ruins the moment that you're in if you have to come down off your high to deal with the issue. You can't just drop it and then go right back into enjoy your night. Like it kind of just ruins the moment. And so having a person there to kind of be you so that you don't have to be you allows you to just enjoy yourself and let someone else deal with any issues. And like, it's life. Sometimes stuff just happens. Someone calls out sick or someone arrives late or there's traffic or whatever, but you don't want to have to be the person who actually has to deal with that, with those nuances.
That's something we talk about as photographers. I think maybe we take for granted, like when something goes wrong, right? Or when we're having a hard time with a guest, or when we're having a hard time with this, 9 out of 10 times our response can be like, all right, go ask the bride and groom. They're in charge. They're our go-to. And
how can you enjoy yourself if you're every time someone's coming over, hey, is it okay if we move the table? Hey, is it okay if this? Hey, if we they just want to be present. They just want to enjoy. And so on the back end, that's where we discuss all of those maybe scenarios. So I already know how you would have handled the situation in case that occurs. And then I don't need to ask you day of. I can just make it a decision on your behalf because we've already chatted and we've already ironed out all of those things.
That's a great point, and I love the idea of that because you're right. So many times we have some sort of issue, and we're really great with that stuff. Like usually we're really good at diffusing kind of things and just deferring to the venue a lot of times for what's right and wrong. Not passive, but like really easygoing. Want to make sure everyone's day is better, right? Except for lights. But once in a while we come to an impasse where someone is trying to mess something up that's going to cause detriment to the bride and groom's experience or the guests. Right. So having to not go to the bride and groom, because that's really the last. Like, hey, they're going to leave this up to them because you're going to listen to them, and because you're not listening to us. Right. But if you can go to you instead, like that's an awesome point because then they're going to enjoy themselves, not even know there was a problem. They're not even going to know that happened.
And a lot of
and to build on that is that as we function as a point of contact for the other vendors. So imagine if you send someone over to the bride and groom. Imagine how many other people have. The DJ sends someone over to the bride and groom. The maitre d' asks the bride and groom, this person, that person. And so they just are bombarded with all these engagements. And so we serve as a point of contact on the vendor side, but as well as the client side. We meet them at the rehearsal. So they're bridal party and their parents and
They're used
everyone
to it.
already knows us,
Yeah.
so they already know who to ask. And so instead of keep going over, hey, what time's the shuttle? Hey, what's this? Hey, what's that? Hey, what's this? Hey, are there any snacks? What time's the water coming? But all of
Right.
these questions that you're the 12 people in your bridal party have, your parents have, your your in-laws have. Now you can just say, ask the wedding planner. And so we do our due diligence on the back end just to make sure that everyone's kind of circled in. But there are just questions day of, and like there are little things that us just having, like we have 2 people present on the day of, and so
That's
just
awesome.
little things like having when family comes over for family pictures, just having someone there to greet them when they get off of the shuttle and tell them where to go. How many
Yeah.
times are they wandering around like, well, where is everyone? Where are the pictures? What time is this? What time is that?
Right.
And something that we do that I find has been really, really helpful. I'm really proud of this. Thank you.
It's dope. Hold on.
Ted, you're not supposed to do that.
There we go.
That's the Pelosi clap,
You're
right?
not supposed
I
to
dig
do
it.
that
I
when
dig
we're
it. I
actually
dig it.
clapping.
Right, that's a not nice clap, and I like it.
No, but like
It's so sassy.
So I'm sure you guys, as photographers and videographers, can really relate to this. But like, how many times have we been to an unplugged ceremony,
Oh,
and
exactly 6.
everyone pulls out their phone anyway, and
Yeah.
bride is pissed, and you're getting pictures, but they are amazing, but all you see is everybody's phone screens in the pictures.
What do
and
you
so,
do in that situation?
Let me tell you about what I do.
Oh,
shit.
man.
Oh
You know,
shit. I'm getting excited.
You know.
All right.
So
EMP.
so what we do is we actually
you say
offer,
EMP?
we
I don't
take
think so.
a video and photos as well, and when we have the officiant say, guys, seriously, put your phones away, we're going to put the video up on Facebook right now and hashtag it. All you have to do is go and you can repost it, and you'll have the video, and then they can get the beautiful pictures that they want. So yes, they know that there's a photographer there, they know that there's a videographer there, but there's no instant gratification on getting those things. But by us, and we say, hey, we're gonna get all the angles, so our photo and our video will be so much better than yours, and you will literally have it this moment in time. So we literally are get all those pictures and we upload them right on that spot, and then everyone then takes them and posts them. And so then my pictures, because they're my pictures too, Ted.
So dope.
I spent all this time designing this wedding. I don't want to see those phones either. But then everyone feels okay with giving up their control for 5 minutes because they know that they can go on Facebook and grab it from that
Yeah,
hashtag.
what if Aunt Shirley has her phone out? You go slap that shit on the ground.
I mean,
That'd be a
God,
great
get
GIF.
that phone out of here.
We gotta get a GIF recording of that. We got to.
I say no.
Speaking
Not
of
today,
gifts, did you
Edna.
see the one of the photographer and it was a video of the photographer and like the mom or somebody like nuts
Yes.
slamming each other out of the
That was
way for
messed
the
up.
things. They were
No,
going
I
in
didn't
for
see that.
Yeah, I saw
I don't know
that.
why I decided to back
I
up
heard
while I
about
was talking.
right.
were
I was like, what,
they
I was
were-
like, what are they going in
Whoa,
for?
they're going in. So they were going for the first kiss or rings or something like that, and
Yeah.
the photographer's trying to get thing, and like the mom or somebody stepped in front of. I think it was like the stepmom or something that stepped in front of the.
Oh, what is
in front of
that?
the photographer, and the photographer like stepped in front, and then the mom stepped in front again. So the photographer just like fucking hip checked her out of the way. It was amazing. There's a
I
video
didn't see
online.
that at all.
That's
So
hilarious.
I want to talk about one thing because I just had a wedding where this happened. One cool thing about having you as a planner, where you know their whole vision and you're with them the whole day, where it's different from just like the maitre d or the venue planner or whatever you want to call them. You know, like what their whole vision is. So, for example, we've just had a wedding where all the photos they wanted, like right before the ceremony, when we showed up at the venue. But you show up, and the maitre d's like, they just want to chill. They don't want to do their photos. And you're like, no, you didn't even ask them. Like,
Right.
and then the next time we want to take them out at night, and the maitre d's like, it's cold.
They-
They don't want
right,
it. Like,
right.
no, this is the shot they really
They
want.
really
Nah,
want it.
I'm not gonna bug them. I'm not gonna bug them. We're like, but you already know ahead of time. Like,
Right.
this is
Yeah,
what
that
they
could be
want.
good.
Like, they're the type of couple
true.
that wants to go out in
Right.
the rain, in the snow, whatever.
And furthermore is that,
on
again,
top
a
of
lot
that,
of that
But also,
But and more.
behind the
In
scenes,
conclusion,
we
furthermost.
share a timeline, and it
Yeah.
literally, and we send that to the venue, the caterer, the everyone. So it literally says 9:15 nighttime photo.
Yeah.
Where on the hill, and so where everyone's already they don't have to lean on their own understanding.
Yeah,
And so our role day of is to become the bride. Like, we wear her skin. Like, we are, I know it's
Fucking
weird, but
Buffalo
that's how
Bill over here.
that's
Yeah,
how
it's
It puts the lotion on its skin or else it gets the hose again.
Like, we're pretty good at Photoshop, and I don't know if we can fix that.
Let's find a better way to say that.
We become our bride, and so we are advocates for them. And so,
Yeah.
like, even if the
We kiss
kitchen,
the
how many?
groom. We no, there's
But,
That's a
like,
bold move.
further.
seriously, how many times have
See how it
like
pans
the
out.
kitchen been behind schedule, and it'll
Oh.
like impact the dance schedule, and they
Yeah.
if no one's there to move things along or rearrange things, they'll end up with like 30 minutes of dance time.
Yeah, and
Oh,
that
man,
that
we
doesn't
For the
that
really.
wedding,
stuff all
and
the
then
time.
and then you're like, hey, I'm leaving in a half hour, but I don't have any pictures of
Not
you know
us.
anyone dancing.
Not us.
Not I.
Well, I'm not
Nay, nay.
saying you guys,
All day
but
packages.
but there are
day.
other vendors. There are other vendors
absolutely.
who are
There are packages.
looking for they
I
are
don't wanna have to
contracted to a
charge them
certain
more.
time,
Right.
and they don't want to have to charge them more. But those things haven't been discussed, so they
Done.
don't know. And then you have to go up and ask them, which is awkward during their wedding, and say,
Yeah.
hey, is it okay if we charge you more to get the things that you really want, and even though you've already paid me, like you
Right.
know.
Yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right.
but more than that, what about like the DJ who everyone keeps coming up to and saying, "Hey, man, why aren't you dancing them?" Like, but he can't.
Yeah,
the venue's
because
behind and they don't want him dancing.
exactly. So
yeah.
it's those sort of considerations,
It's nice
but
having somebody to talk between the vendors as well.
Yeah.
Because like I had something recently where it's like the photographer and I were aligned, and then there was a band, and the band said, the photographer and I made sure we went up. We said, hey, who's announcing the whole night? They
Oh, this
said,
happens
it's
every
person,
wedding.
This person over there, and we said, okay, we're gonna go talk to them. Do you have a timeline already? And they said, yep, here's timeline. So we go over to the person who's gonna be announcing everything. We say, hey, these are our faces. This is what we look like. If you're gonna do something, would you mind? It'd be great for us if you could just like make sure we're around, and then we can get the video or photo of exactly what you're doing, so everything looks great and they have everything. Absolutely. Is this what the timeline's gonna be? Absolutely. Yep. We'll make sure. And then it was like first dances, and then like a 30-minute break for a course, and then speeches, and then a 30-minute break. We get done with first dances. They go sit down. We have just enough time to put our stuff down and walk away. And they go, all right, now we're going to have our first speech. And we're like, what the fuck?
Every
you were at
time
least in
with
the room
bands.
for that one.
It's
There's other
literally-
times we're like in the
I
bathroom.
can't
Yeah.
wait. I can't wait to have a band on this show so I can confront this right now.
Well, it's so funny you say that because every DJ we've worked with will make sure everyone's in the room.
Right.
They'll go around and find you before
Right.
they'll start the stuff. Never had a band do that. Ever.
yeah, and the thing is that we do that as well. So it's the kind of situation where we already
could
say
stop them.
but before we already say
Freeze!
here vendor meals are going to be at this time, so that you don't have to wonder when are you
Oh,
going to
man.
eat.
Well,
we
where
literally
is the
never
food?
know.
Where
ever.
is the food going to
Hired.
be? You know what I mean? And so,
But-
because at the end of the day, again, an incredible event requires an incredible team. So, like, obviously, you can't perform at your best if it's been 10 hours and you haven't eaten a single thing and your eyes are blurry. So,
literally every time.
Sometimes I bring a cooler.
The food is one thing, but what about when you just go to the bathroom and the band
Right.
starts it, and
Right.
like you're on a
Yeah.
different floor, like.
And you're
yeah,
pooping. What if you got to poop?
or how about when the bathroom? I've definitely been in some more rustic venues where the bathroom isn't even the same venue. You have
Yeah,
to walk
like
down to
it's
go
an
to
outhouse.
the
And-
to go.
Yeah, I've been at weddings
go
where
poop.
I've seen the photographer
Drop a
talk
deuce.
to the band
Take a
and say,
dookie.
"Hey, I'm gonna go run, do this, or whatever." Yeah, no sweat. And like the minute they leave the room, and now the mother and son dance, and you're like, "What the fuck, man?"
Right,
Yes,
and
you
so
literally just
we're
said that.
we're there,
It seems
to just
Some
kind
are really
of.
good at it though, and some are really nice.
That's true. No,
Well,
but
some of
having
them are.
someone,
But
in
yeah, just
control of
and
that.
it's just an additional person to just make sure that everything
Right.
is going
I have
on
no idea.
in accordance to what the bride wants. The venue is
Yeah.
really running it in
Right.
regard to what they want. You know what I mean? Like that's
Right.
what they're doing. So we just are making sure we're advocating for the bride so that she can just relax and they can just enjoy what's going on and not have to worry about those nuances. And
Yeah,
I can't
exactly.
tell you. Stuff happens. Like the venue comes and
People
they say
mess
you
up.
can't. We had an outlet that was not working, and they needed to move the photo booth, but it was a big photo booth, and they didn't
Right,
have
no,
another place
you're
to
right,
put
right.
it. Like
It's
know,
in the
and
fucking
so
parking lot now. So I was just thinking back to my wedding day, and I'm like, I don't remember how that went down. Like I remember what the band did and like the order of things that happened, but I don't remember if they waited for
I don't remember.
photographers, videographers. Like it's not something I like think about. At
Yeah,
all.
and you shouldn't really.
and you
That's
shouldn't,
the-
and
Right,
that's a
right.
really poignant point. You shouldn't have to, and so and most people
My
don't.
video
and that's,
sucked, but so I'm pretty sure the stuff was in it because it was one camera angle and 3 hours of footage.
And with video, it's way different, right?
Right.
Because Ted, if they start to toast, you honestly just have to get in there for a minute or two because you take a couple awesome photos of it. That's the whole toast.
Absolutely.
Video, you need the whole toast,
Right,
like to find those
right.
good parts.
Moments, yep.
And
Yeah.
and knowing, so having done both, right? Like, and I've less frequently done both. I look at it, and I'm sure you look at it the same way, as like, there are some things that are just more important for video
Right.
than they are for photo.
Yeah.
As far as you need to be the priority capturing this because I only need 2 pictures of somebody holding a microphone with their mouth open,
Yeah.
and you need the whole speech. Right?
Actually, it's funny because for the speeches, I literally get these short little snapshots of their photos, right? And it's like,
Right.
I just need to get one, like 1 out of 10. Like their mouth doesn't look weird, so I use that one.
right.
Yeah,
That
then you get like a creative one or whatever.
Yeah.
But
You could do like the machine gun, like Sony A9, 20 frames per second.
Yeah.
Got it, done. Okay, and then go get
So
candid
with
to
my
everybody
kids on my
else.
phone, I just hold the button down because I know one of those.
Yeah, you'll get
100%
one of
will
them.
be
You'll
okay.
get
There
one
you
of them.
go.
That's
There you
brilliant.
go.
I started doing that.
But,
what were we
Yeah.
talking about?
I don't know.
weddings.
No, we were talking about making sure that people are
You guys
working
In
together and all
harmony.
those things.
Yeah, it's the
Harmony,
same
hashtag.
way that, and I use
F
this
Club
for you
7.
guys because I watch a lot of sports.
Do you?
You
And
watch
play
sports
video
ball?
games.
And video
You play video games?
Which video games?
You guys
don't
bust on me for playing tabletop games. It's literally the same thing.
It was a joke.
I hate you people.
So, but we like to liken
It's better.
ourselves to being the the coach. I'm the coach. We are the coach, and everyone is playing their respective roles. But the coach is the person who's looking at the overall
Tell that to
production.
a couple of photographers we know. They'll be like, "Fuck no, I'm the coach."
Yeah, I mean, but
I'm
it's,
sure there's that. Have you ever had that personality conflict?
I mean, of course,
Yeah.
and I think that goes to say
I
with
mean, you seem hard to work with.
Oh, I can't tell that story.
I mean, I feel like in any industry, you're going to have, at some point run across some sort of personality clashes. And so, I mean, our thing is that we are here. I'm here as the bride, so I can't take it personal. This
Right.
person likes you. This person chose to work with you, and I see in you what she sees in you. But we just all have to come
also
down.
see that you're a dick. Right?
That's a really
like
great attitude.
my bride
That's
loves
really
you,
great.
but you, sir, are a dick.
Well, that's kind of what we always say. Like
All the time.
We barely have ever. No. Oh, that you sir are. We've never
Literally all the
really
time.
ran into a bad
Yeah.
counterpart in weddings, but we
I have
always.
twice, and both times it was doing weddings for family.
You ever wonder if it's you? Just say,
Dude, I listened to that episode on the way here. I listened to that. So that's something my dad used to say
Maybe
to me. He
it's you.
goes,
Maybe
"If
it's
you
you.
have a problem with somebody, you should always be thinking, is it me?"
I mean,
a good
that's a
question.
good
and
question.
And probably because I'm
no,
not the easiest
that's
person
not where I was
but-
going to go. I was going to say you always have to think like, well, they're here for the bride, right?
Right.
Or the couple.
Right,
Like
as
I
long
have
as-
to.
have to work
And
with
I
them.
have to
have
make this work.
definitely run into situations where I had like I won't name any names or anything, but I had a photographer who he was just bride wanted one thing, parents wanted another
Yeah.
one thing, and he wanted one thing, and so it was just disastrous because the photographer was literally like on his own accord, and I literally had to pull him to the side. Dad literally said to me, he's like, if you let him come near me, I will rip his head off.
Whoa.
That's how upset that Dad was at how he felt. He perceived the photographer to be just disrespectful
Was he
toward
calling
his
the bride baby and sweetie and
no,
honey and
but
saying you have
like
a fine
we have a timeline, and we
'Cause
were
that's
like we were gonna
happened.
what?
No. We're starting to break our rule.
I'm not breaking the rule. I didn't mention any names. I'm not bashing. I'm stating something that happened. We may have
That
worked
can
with
be
a
bashing.
photographer. It's not a bad thing.
You were holding back on a story over there.
Oh,
what?
no.
You look
I'll
like
tell
you're
my
But he
story.
was right. Like he was about to say something.
He was about to. You know what? Some brides, some people, they work with like if you have some people have a photographer in mind or a vendor in mind, and it might be a terrible like a not a fun person to work with, but they're so obsessed with their work that they will
Right.
just
They'll put up with
compromise
shit, yeah.
and they'll put up with whatever it is.
I've had that.
And and I've had it too.
Yep,
And
yep,
so
yep.
but again, my perspective is always this person really wanted to work with this person. They paid them money.
Right.
How can we make it
Right,
work?
we
So
have
I'm
to make it work.
always solutions, based and
Exactly,
not, problems
exactly.
based. And so the thing about, being a wedding planner, I think that has really the most, being a parent really made me a strong wedding planner. And that's not something you would usually think of, but like
Right.
I have twins and my girls are 12. And so anyone who has kids knows that nothing goes according to plan. You have to always think on your feet. And
Yep.
so I became very resourceful just by having, 2 little kids that I always had to change the plan. And so, like when my kids were little, they would always take one shoe off. Like we get out of the car, and they like chuck it out the window, and I'd like, they would eat it. It would be something, and they would want me to carry them around. They're like 4 years old, and they have one shoe, and we were like at the market.
That's
and
my
now I have 2 kids.
My 2-year-old now.
My 4-year-old's
a maniac.
And I have 2 kids in the cart, so I have no room for food or anything else. So I'm literally like, I figured I could put 2 carts like and push the cart with the other cart. So it just it forces you to be creative and to think on your feet. You can't just fall apart if things go wrong with your kids. You have to figure it out. And so I feel like that, along with my Girl Scouts, because I was a Girl Scout,
That's awesome.
really, helped build on that.
I was thinking about, as you were saying that, it made me think of Mike and my past careers, that like anything that could go wrong would. Situations would change all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Literally your location, like where you were, would change constantly. And I feel like that in a weird way prepared us for this going forward.
Yeah, you have to be flexible. You have to be able to think on your feet. You have to be, and honestly, when you have kids, and I not to beat it to death, but I feel like if you can talk to a 4-year-old, you can deal with anyone, because 4-year-olds are the most unreasonable people.
They're
Because
little drunk people.
they are so unreasonable, and I feel like girls are even worse than boys. And so I had 2 little girls who had 2 very different opinions from me and each other. So it was like. Was like herding cats. And so when I deal with a difficult adult, I'm like, whatever. At least I don't have to deal with,
At least you're not 4.
Right.
Like, just not saying that to them.
Like, my kid is 4 right now. Oh, my God.
4-year-olds are terrible.
The problem with my 4-year-old, I have a 4-year-old as well, is he's literally too smart for his own good.
Right.
Like, he's just smart enough to know when I'm trying to get one over on him, and nothing's working anymore. So I'm just like, all right, no, because I said so. Well, why? Or like, that's not what Mommy said. Mommy said we're gonna do this. Here, their daughter, they're fine.
What are we talking about? Boudoir?
No. We're gonna talk more about KMT I Do.
Yeah, so
that's pretty
what
cool.
the fuck did you just say?
KMT I Do.
KMT I Do.
The I Do crew. So
the I Do hashtag I Do crew. Is that a thing?
KMT I Do crew. So like every bride.
Do you have both those hashtags? You should be all over both those hashtags.
Well, it's like KMT I Do crew. But yeah, like every bride has a bride tribe. They have their group of trusted friends and family that kind of.
Do bridesmaids? Does the bridal party ever really trust each other? Let's be real.
I mean, trusted. Trusted ish. To help and guide through the process. And so, we have our own, I Do crew that we have that we trust and help guide, brides through the process as well.
That's dope.
All the fun stuff.
That's actually pretty smart. I like that. So Ted, any comments, corrections?
No.
Correction.
Yeah, did you
see anything? Just say Pagful again.
Pagful. We often get into discussions in some of the groups that we're in about diversity in the industry, and I think it's a good thing to talk about. It is
very important.
So
wait, do we really want to talk about this? Because we need a good build up to that. Because otherwise, we're going from there's no connection.
We didn't stop and then come right into this.
This is a good topic, but let's.
Yeah, we can pause.
Let's make it work.
I
have a solid question here.
Let's make it work, guys.
We can pause. We gotta make it work.
Continuity.
Make it
makes
So that's how we move forward by actively acknowledging that this could be more diverse. We couldn't add, and so as a person who is. I'm always aware of diversity because I'm on the other side of the stick. But as a woman and as a black person, but it's easy to, when you're in your own bubble, to say, hey, this is comfortable. And so by challenging that sort of, status quo and saying, yes, this is comfortable, but how do we make this more inclusive? And how can, I see it as making good great. Like, that's my my thought process on that. Like, how can we, the more, diverse it is, the more perspectives you have, and the more perspectives you have, the more experience and learning opportunities that presents. So,
yeah, and I think it's important in our industry, and again, I'm probably not the best person to speak on this, but to look at the conversations, because I try not to online. I try to have these conversations in person. It feels more intimate, more personal to me, and online I feel like a lot of stuff, a lot of wires can get crossed and misconstrued.
Yeah, of course.
So I think the conversation usually starts out good, and then it turns to
terrible.
People, it usually pretty quickly turns to terrible. But right in the middle, there's actual legitimate feelings that happen where people are saying like, we look at this industry and we say like, oh, this is such a great industry, and it's personal to us, and we're artists, and we help each other. How great is that? And then someone comes in and says, yeah, but you're not including, you're not being diverse, you're not including people. It's you're helping your bubble, and it feels like a personal attack to them, or it feels like you're attacking their industry, so people get very defensive. And I don't think it's meant to be that way at all, right? We're trying to say, hey, let's share this, right? We have this. Let's share this with everybody, right? Let's bring in everybody. Let's not exclude other people, right? So, and like I said in our private discussion earlier, like there's areas that we're in that are not diverse, right? Like there's areas that we operate in, like the Jersey Shore area is not a hugely diverse area.
Yeah.
So how do you go about like creating, like bridging those gaps or fixing that? How do you go about like on your end, have you seen that? Have you seen people trying to bridge that gap, or have you taken steps to do that?
Yeah, I mean, I obviously, again, being on the other side of the coin.
She does it every day.
Only every single day. But yeah, I mean, in terms of diversity, that's something that we actively, approach. And so obviously, like, my entire team is of all different colors and ages, and, and so really for me, I don't so much look at people, and again, I'm on the other side, so like obviously if you are a white man, then you have to actively say, how can I be more diverse? Like I kind of bring the diversity with me. That makes sense.
That does make sense.
So my perspective is obviously going to be a lot more different than yours, but in terms of telling you like what you can do differently is just actively looking for people who are looking for opportunities. And so I'm always looking for people who are looking for opportunities to grow in this industry. And so what I found, to be a real consideration is that often, people of, black and brown descent and different sorts of, they have a different resource level. So they also often have a different sort of standard in terms of what their production is, just because of what they have available to them. And so like, how do we create how do we get everyone to work within whatever the standard is, and not just say, oh, your work isn't good enough, or oh, you're not this and you're not that. Like, how do we bridge that gap in terms of, and for us, it's through our onboarding process, through our training processes. And so that way, we have a uniform sort of standard, and that way I don't have to just say, oh, well, your work isn't the same as this person's work, I don't want to work with you. What we do is we train in-house, and that's how we can always produce that same sort of quality and that same sort of standard.
That's something we've been looking at too. I never would have thought of that as being like a difference in diversity, right? I never would have thought of like
KMT
this is
University,
right? I never would have thought, and this is why I asked the question, right? This is because we just don't know, like what the difference is in resources that would affect what good looks like in your perspective, right? Like what, like this is what you think is high quality work, or this is what I think is high quality work, or whatever it is, and what you're not like pull information from and stuff like that, because there's people of all different skill levels, of all different races, all different creeds, all different colors, right? But just that starting point is interesting.
It's not, and we can, we're like 3 people away from racism. Like literally, my dad grew up in a time where you couldn't even drink out of the water fountain of a white person, and his father is white. So, so it was a really confusing thing for him. Right. But, that affected him, and he shared that experience with us, not just in the story, but the way he raised us. And and so the same way you talked about when the guy, he just was like, yes ma'am. Well, his parents probably told him that if someone talks to him like that, just humble yourself and say that, because then there will be no violence, or no like issues. It's a different sort of, you are taught to behave a certain way by your parents when you're growing up a certain way. And so I said it to say that if you didn't come from a situation where you necessarily could afford to go to college or afford to do a technical sort of training, that you probably learned that skill somewhere in the world, and that somewhere in the world isn't going to be that same standard as a collegiate level or a technical level. And so you'll have these ambitious people who do want to break into these industries, but they they don't present well, or what we perceive as well. They don't present the way that we see them as, they should, and they're often precluded from these opportunities. And so, you have to want to peel back the skin on it and say, is this somebody who's teachable, and then you have to actively want to do it. It doesn't just come to you. And so it has to be an earnest, sort of, activity on your part. So
Right. I think that kind of supports what we talked about in episode 1, where like skills and equipment matter less to us than personality.
Yeah.
If you seem driven, if you seem like you're
I can teach you how to work
learn,
it.
right?
I can teach you all of those things.
I can get you there.
Yeah, but you can't teach somebody
Absolutely.
to be ambitious. You can't teach somebody to want it. You can't teach somebody to be, someone who's constantly reflecting and self-aware and how can I be. You can't teach those skills. And so
self-awareness seems to be the hardest thing to teach
Yeah.
in the world, and it's absolutely amazing because that ties into a person's perspective, and it just mindset and perspective is so powerul. It's crazy.
And that's the difference between, I feel that the difference between a good
Amazing.
I think that's the difference between an amazing, photographer, videographer, vendor, and when someone can have an amazing skill set where they're good at what they do, but people who are self-aware are conscious of how they, are perceived by others, so then they actively do things to make other people feel comfortable and do better and to push. And so, for the KMT I Do crew, I am looking for, our team is, a group of professionals who are self-aware and who are always, looking for opportunities to show their professionalism, to show and to grow and to, and to just work in the interest of the client. And so the KMT experience is based on, the client experience and, not just the product or service, but the overall experience in itself.
That's amazing. Awesome.
What we were talking about, going back to episode 1 though, and I think this ties in with talking about the people that don't have the same level of resources to pull from, is we were just talking about sometimes it's how cool you are instead of what gear you have, but that's two-sided, because we also talked about how finding the right circle of people is sometimes where you find success, because you find all those opportunities. So if you don't have access to that, your road to success might be much slower.
Yeah,
or
but
harder.
it's just
And
like being in the
sometimes-
high school. If you
Ted
don't
doesn't
have
know.
What's a high school?
What even is that? That's where we
the
have
place
pagpoles.
where
So
Is that a bag full?
My
It's
mom
funny, though,
referred
we
to my
say,
father as the principal.
so having
well, that counts.
That was different. You weren't
that's-
supposed to hear anything.
That's sexy. That's hot. So no, I think what's important about that circle, having that circle on success, is also that not being self-aware enough to know that your circle,
Isn't
if
diverse.
it's not diverse, can limit you big time.
Yeah,
having that exposure, having that ability to see beyond yourself. I mean, that's major, and having that diversity can be powerful.
And I think that kind of takes us back into that circle I talked about. When I first started Dare to Dream Big. Dare to Dream Big was an after-school program, but in my mind, it would be much easier to deal with under-resourced and underprivileged kids. It was much more difficult than I had imagined. But the idea behind Dare to Dream Big was so sincere in the sense that we talked about entrepreneurship and civic responsibility,
Absolutely.
all in the same sort of, each one teach one, reach back down, pull one up. And so I think that the message that sometimes gets lost in success, or when we get so comfortable within our own bubble, is that, we always say, okay, well, that person's not on my level, I don't want to deal with that person. But if we keep in our minds that sort of, how can I empower someone who will then empower someone and who will then empower someone, and you actively challenge yourself to hold that standard, then it becomes this different thing. Because I feel like when you actively look for people who are precluded from opportunities and give them an opportunity, then they do the same thing. They're so grateful. They're and it keeps pushing forward. And then you have this, people who are, think about if you give someone who's thirsty water, they are so appreciative and they are so they don't take water for granted and they want to do whatever they can. And so I just feel like when sometimes people who are, in positions where they're, eager to learn, they take it for, it's so much more value. It's like, you
Right.
know, when girls were allowed to go to school, they take it very seriously because it's a privilege. And so by affording them, you know, that privilege, that, you know, you get to learn from that too, because they're doing their due diligence and they're growing and bringing something to the table, and they're working really hard. And so whereas some people are like, this is just something I do, they don't really care, you know, they don't see it as an honor and a privilege to be a part of it. So
Yeah, it's amazing.
We work in one of the best industries for doing stuff like that, because it's one of the only ones, at least I've been in, I'm sure you guys too, where there's this thought process of like, when you start out, you think everyone's your competition. Mm-hmm. And maybe a couple years, or once someone brings you under their wing, you learn it's more like community over competition in this industry, which is really cool.
Yeah.
You don't see that in a lot of other places where everyone is trying to help everyone. Get better.
Well, we see that in the photography and videography section. Is that the same?
That's true.
That same in
I'm just
planning?
assuming.
Right.
Yeah, I mean,
made an ass out of you and me.
So even, you know, and Ted, I was talking to you about this earlier, is, you know, we talked about our floating cube, and you said, well, you know, do you guys work with other planners? And yes, absolutely. Like we want this, the KMT collection showroom is a communal space. I keep saying that. You're like, can I bring food here? I'm like, you live here too. Like, why are you asking me? That's weird, you know? So
I like to eat.
It's weird.
you live here too, you know? So it's all good.
First a truck,
you know?
now then a van,
And food.
and also weird.
My truck, now a van, now food. Ted's book on business.
I'm hungry.
But
Felsberg
yeah, I
method.
mean, it's just we want to work with, you know, all the different vendors, because, you know, we can learn from each other. And so there's no such thing as competition, especially in Philly, where there are, like, even if we wanted
Too
to
many
book
weddings.
every single bride, we physically could not.
Right.
So why not, you know, link up with other people who have the resources and the talent and the ability, and, you know, what can we learn from each other? And so each group of experiences, you know, is something to build on. And so
It's funny because in our
funny?
industry, you would never see this in another industry where someone comes to you for business and you're not available to do that business.
right, you give it
would
to
go,
another person.
Here, give you and the rest of your referrals from now on to this person.
Of
right?
course.
Like that's the way it goes down. And yeah,
And
it may come back to you, and it probably will come back to you from that person on something they can't have. You know what I mean?
And it goes back to what we said, that we act, as long as we're all acting in the interest of our couples,
Right.
then there is a certain harmony that is required in order to facilitate that.
Do you
and
think
so
that civic? What do we call it?
Civic duty.
Civic duty ties into.
Is that like Honda Civic?
No.
Or-
Civic duty, that thought process of civic duty ties into our industry of helping each other.
yeah,
or bringing
so
people up.
that civic responsibility is a responsibility. And so I was raised in faith, and so if being raised in faith says that it is your job, I am to look out for your neighbor. And
Right.
so that is just something that is, you know, that we were taught at a very early age, and it's something that has resonated with me throughout. But I truly believe, you know, like, you know, that if you treat your neighbor the way that you want to be treated, that, you know, that comes back to you, even if it's not directly from that neighbor. So if you're planting apple seeds, you're gonna get an apple tree. Like that's just how it goes. And so, you know, I always say to myself, like, what are you sowing? Like I'm sowing, you know, seeds of, you know, and again, when I started my business, I was essentially not ousted, but, you know, I left the venue because I had this disconnect.
Son of a bitch.
Where is it?
You don't know what you had, you dumb bastard.
Tonight we ride.
Got Khaleesi vibes over here.
Yeah.
You know, I wonder
chills.
though. I wonder if that clicks in our industry because of what it is, right? Like we're not selling cars, we're not selling commodities,
Right.
Why do we keep talking about car sales?
It's that. Why are we talking about Honda Civics? It's
I
that.
only talk about car sales. That's all you ever talk about.
You talk about it.
But
No,
it's
you talk
that
about it like 4
one
times.
day in their
Uh-huh.
life, not a product. It is a product, but you know what I mean. It's
Yeah.
not shoes or something that can be returned. It's something.
It's
a little,
nothing they can ever get back. And
Yeah.
so we
They
have
can
to
return it.
honor that, and we have to
called divorce.
and act in, you know, they can't get it back. So we take it so seriously that we're able to put our feelings aside
Yeah,
for
that's
whatever
what I
day,
mean. Right.
so that we can, you know, embrace each other. But, you know, on the planning side, because like I said, this is a 200-hour process. So, you know, we talk to our photographers, you know, multiple times. We have multiple meetings, videographers as well. So obviously, if I'm going to have to talk to you and be, you know, spend time with you, and we're all on one accord, let's be pleasant. Let's have a good time with it. And so, you know,
What the fuck did you just point at me for?
I didn't know if you guys just catch it.
I'm kidding. Go ahead. Sorry.
We just upgraded from a Civic to an Accord in that conversation.
I did see that.
Oh,
That was
back to
good.
cars. And
Hashtag
back.
Honda plug.
See, Honda only has those two
Do they
options. though, in the
sponsor this
sedan
show?
model.
Guys, Honda just
Or-
texted.
Oh,
they
dude, if
canceled.
Honda
So far, we have lost. Who'd we lose? We lost Aziz.
Aziz,
We just
Joe
lost
Pesci.
George Foreman.
George
Foreman,
Foreman,
And
definitely.
now we lost Honda.
Honda. Yep,
Damn it.
losing all our
This
sponsors.
podcast is going nowhere.
We're so
It's
fucked.
because Toyota's better.
Now we lost
that's
Toyota.
They're like, we don't want Ted. That's cool.
We're relegated to Chevy.
But I mean, I
What
guess
about Kia?
when it comes down.
I'm sorry. You know, I love you. It's cool.
But like when
Okay.
it comes down to it, again, an incredible. This is like, can we just put that over my head? Like an incredible event, incredible
Right
team.
there.
Dude,
No
that's
matter
beautiful. I love that.
how
That's so
how
true.
great of a planner I am, I cannot do it without the videographer, without the photographer, without the venue, without the coordinator. So with that in mind,
But
I
you
literally
can do it without Ted.
I mean, I
That's
can't. I need.
Absolutely not.
No, Ted's essential. So you
That's
know,
right.
when it comes down to it, when you have that sort of perspective, I literally cannot do it without you. The same, it gives you a certain sort of patience. It gives you a certain sort of you know demeanor. And so like it's the same as when you're with your kids. You literally cannot just be like, I don't want to be your parent anymore. So you have to figure out a way to make it work. And so when when we're dealing with vendors, we are.
Yeah, no
You
one
know?
listening. Please don't ever say that to your kids.
You have to make it
Sometimes
work.
you gotta.
You have to figure it out. And so like
There's
for
been moments where I'm like, nope, I don't want to be your dad anymore. Just joking.
Don't do that.
Ted has offended his
Never
wife
mind.
on this.
I know his kids. I hope they're not watching.
Ted,
He offended his
claim-
principal.
10 years from now,
Listen, I
they
claim,
watch this
I claim
podcast like,
Ted.
Dad.
I claim Ted as my discovery. I pulled him out of the depths of the Apple Store and brought him in the industry. And
She said I was essential.
and listen, only the positive things though. All the negative shit, that's on Ted and Mike somehow.
Hey, you did really good on that wedding you second shot with me. That was fun.
I did.
You a good
All
job.
right, all right, all right.
Oh.
By the way, we're at
Is
the
that supposed to be demeaning?
5-minute mark. Do you guys want to
No, I just
reset
want
again?
to like kill you with kindness. So, maybe you.
You
That's-
know,
that's
you know
Jesus'
me for
teaching. I can
you-
tell
No,
that
but
that's the pastor.
he's known
Yeah.
me for years, and you know that doesn't work.
But
But you also
you
know, you've known me for years, and you also know that if
Let's
I
hug
make
it
fun
out.
of you, that means that I like you, and I don't make fun of people I don't like.
He must love me then every day.
That's why your elbows are touching.
How much do I mess with you?
None. He doesn't like.
Not
you.
at all. I hate Mike. He's a little piece of shit.
We're
Clearly.
sitting next to each other. He just-
Mike and I are
know.
vicious
You're like
to each other.
touching.
Hold on. Can we stop
I
for 1
feel
second?
weird.
We can't.
Wait,
we cannot
stop,
go
stop,
from
stop,
a
stop.
very positive podcast to no segue to some really tough shit
Yeah,
to
right?
now no ending to the
Yeah,
podcast.
yeah.
I
You're
love that. Though.
We're just like we're ending. Bye,
No, I
guys.
couldn't. I don't want to make jokes to that part. I'm like, this is too serious. I'm gonna say something offensive.
It's not that it's serious. It's real. I
break
love that
the
shit.
fourth wall, stare at the camera, and go. Shit's about to get real. That'll be our segue.
Shit's about to go down. Don't do that. So
Stop.
What happened? Don't die,
She's
please.
choked. Don't die on camera.
No,
Wait.
this has been
Wait till
an
it's
amazing episode. Probably one of my favorite episodes.
I mean, I hope
learned
this is just
so
one of
much.
many. So
Absolutely, yeah,
we
we have
can
to have you back.
rotate cubes, guys.
do
Like
this.
we have
We can go
different
over
sets.
there.
We can go to
We can go
Giselle.
over
We can go to
Go over there.
ceremony.
Go
We
over
can go to
there.
beauty bar. We got options.
Where's boudoir, man?
Oh, we
Where's
gotta
the
get
boudoir
makeup put on
one?
one day. That would be fun.
And we can
Oh, that
put
could be a
boudoir
promo. It could just be
and
Ted.
makeup.
we
We
get our
can do
noses
it.
waxed.
That could be. You did that.
I can talk and see because we might need an extra couple strips,
Singing?
for you guys.
For him,
but
That happened on a
yeah,
wedding day.
We
It was
did
awesome.
that at a wedding.
we're
It was
doing.
awesome.
We're having a Game of
you do
Thrones
No.
party here
What?
for the
When?
launch. So
What's
you see, we
happening?
have our TV over here. We're gonna have a Game of Thrones party for all our
Oh my
vendors. We're gonna all dress up as our favorite Game of Thrones person.
I love
We're
Khal
coming.
Drogo.
We're coming as full. I just need a Tyrion. So
Can I tell you something?
Ted-
I did
You
a.
You can do Tyrion.
No.
That's the little guy,
I
right?
know who that is. It's not-
Really?
no,
That's the little guy.
I feel like I'm more of a who's the what's
You're
the,
not
what's
Khal
the
Drogo,
no
though.
what's the no hell no what's the Stark that died the one son,
The first one.
the first one that died, like the real one, not it's not Ned Stark. Rob Stark, the one who was like the king
At
of the
the
North,
wedding?
but
Yeah.
yeah, like that, like he's
You
okay.
feel, you
I could-
feel
I could do
Rob
that.
like
I could
who?
go Rob Stark.
I've never heard a person.
I'm
want to
realistic.
be-
I'm
like-
realistic
You
about
are,
my
okay,
capabilities.
okay.
Listen,
He's like,
I feel
I'm-
like I could be the
he's
true
like-
king of the North, but then I get killed.
He's
No,
like-
I'm like the red-haired guy from above the wall, the big dude.
Yeah.
That's me.
Okay.
Ted's
that,
like-
that makes sense.
Ted's
That's
like,
what's up.
I'm a brand
No, he likes
star
that big
right
girl.
after the fall.
Oh my God. Well,
Which
keep,
Stark
let me,
doesn't get
Is
back
that
to
an
their
MS
clients?
joke?
let me keep us surprised. Keep us surprised. But you know, like I said, we're a communal space. I got a rose gold karaoke
I saw-
microphone.
I saw
so
a
That's
movie.
like with sequins on it.
Well, it's
What?
not sequence. It's
We
Smooth
sat
as
in the
fuck.
back and talked about books before. You can ask your favorite question
Oh,
on this one.
yay! What is your favorite business book?
Or a book that like inspires you for business.
Game of
stuff
Thrones.
Like that.
I mean, I think that I kind of already touched on it, but it would definitely have to be Michael Gerber's E-Myth. I think that for me,
What is
it's Michael Gerber's book. The book basically talks about how in business, why most small businesses fail and how most small businesses actually come to fruition. And it's really, to be a small business owner, you have to have, be 3 different people, and you have to be, the entrepreneur, the manager, and the technician. And so the technician is the person who actually like does the job and they're good. That's the skill set. The manager is the person who does like the back end work on the business in terms of, like the payroll and all the things that aren't fun. And then the entrepreneur is the person who moves the business forward in terms of the new ideas and the new technology and growing the business. And so he talked about how the role of each of those, and then how it can how you have to balance them, and who's really going to be in control. And so
Wow.
it really helped me tremendously in terms of understanding my staff's perspective. I am very much an entrepreneur. I always have a new idea every single day. I liken myself to a less eccentric Elon. So
It's not a bad thing to listen to.
and he's kind of crazy, and I'm kind of crazy too. And I have a very aggressive like work schedule. I'm always like engaged in something, and so most people aren't like that.
Right.
So how do I not intimidate my staff or make them feel like they have to
They have
be
to match that.
Elons
Right.
too? And so for me, understanding the
Don't be an
understanding
Elon. Be an Elron.
No, don't be an Elron. Or do. We're not offending anyone that follows Elron.
Hey, that dude's got some money.
Hey,
so it's
do
all right.
what you do.
Yeah.
One of the things we
times I go
talked
home.
about 2 episodes ago was, and this is it right here. You were being too nice. You let me talk, and that's why you don't talk right now. So
you
one of the
tell
things
me
we
on
talked about with Bo Ridge was having, in order to have a successful business, you need to have,
A certain level of aggression.
especially with employees, is like a progressive discipline plan.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you have discipline steps built into your business, that if this is what happens, this is here up until termination, right?
Yep.
You have to
And-
be able to
remember
do that. So I watch a lot of not a lot of TV, but a lot of Gordon Ramsay shows.
Okay.
He doesn't have that many.
Okay.
when they're out, so like when he puts out a new one, I'm like, pff, I'm all in.
Okay.
Because really what he does is he goes in and he evaluates a business and finds out what's wrong with it, right? And now it's done in a big show and all this kind of stuff,
Yeah.
and the cooking pieces and all that stuff. But if you look at it, you can just see. My favorite part is just watching the owners and watching how they interact and what they do. And like 75 to 90% of the time, it's they won't fire the bad egg, right? Like there's somebody in the business that's a sickness to the business, or not holding people accountable, or not being able to discipline, and the people don't respect the owner. That's a problem, right?
Yeah, and I think
being
that-
able to come in and say, no, this is my standards, this is what I expect. That's how you gain respect from your employees, and they say, you know what? I want to work here and I want to do my best because that person's holding me accountable.
Yeah, and I think that the E-Myth really summed that up in a really, easy to understand way, because, he basically just talked about, your business is a reflection of you. And so I am jack of all trades. And so my business is jack of all trades. And so if you
Right.
aren't an organized person, your business isn't an organized thing.
Right.
And your business is literally a reflection of you. So you have to fix you first
Right.
before you can actually work on your business. Because if you're just like all over the place, so is your business, and it shows there. And so I think that for this book, he talked about the different levels inside you, and then how do you balance them in order to make it make sense, in a business sort of way. And so that was something that was just profound for me. So, but I definitely struggle with sort of not wanting to be the bad guy. I'm so committed to just growth, and I really believe in an experiential learning sort of platform.
Mm-hmm.
So I use my business as an opportunity to help other people grow, and that's something that's really important to me. And I think that failure isn't the antithesis of success, but it's a part of the process. And I think
Absolutely.
that you have to give people a safe place, a safe environment to fail and to learn from it. And so I'm constantly trying to make my training program say, how can I create an environment where people, to get them to self-reflect without me having to tell them what they could have done differently. And so even in our leadership meetings, I'm saying, okay, tell me what you did and tell me 2 things that you could have done differently. It's not a bad or good thing, but language is a lot. Tell me what you could have done differently. How could we have,
That's something that the guy Mike introduced me to, Robert Kiyosaki. The guy, he always talks about there has to be, in order for there to be success, there has to be risk, and failure is just a step in that. You have to be willing to, what does he call it? Not go broke. Go broke but not be poor, right? He's like, you have to be willing to go broke on a risk in order to gain big for a big reward, right?
Yeah,
so,
I think that makes total sense. And
did I quote that right?
Yeah, his other big argument is one of the worst things about like our education system is that it teaches you failing is wrong.
I know.
Or one of his big things is
it teaches you that failing. They don't tell you that failing is a part of the process.
Right.
Like,
for him in business, he's like, you want to fail often and quick up front, so
Right.
you can find the solution.
Keep moving.
But his other thing is always like, if you fail a math test, they tell you got to study harder in math. Whereas if I fail a math test, I'm just going to find the kid that got an A and hire him.
Right. Exactly.
Whereas like building a team.
So I did read a book a couple years ago called Strength Finders, and it was something put out by I forget what the group is. They do all these major surveys in the business world. I forget what the name of the group is.
Encyclopedia Britannica.
No, it's something surveys. It's very famous, and I don't know why.
I know what you're talking about. I can't think of the name though.
Anyway,
me and Ted are like do.
So they,
Ted's like, we didn't have that in my
book
library in school.
We did have the Encyclopedia Britannica.
Yeah, that was
just one part of it. So the point of Strength Finders was to identify your strengths, right? To say what you do and what you're good at and stuff like that. And they say, here's your weaknesses. Ignore those. Don't look at your weaknesses at all. Focus on your strengths, because making your strengths better is going to make you a powerhouse, and you take other people and let them fill these roles.
And I think again, back to I'm just such a I think like Michael Gerber owes me a check for this, but he really talked about like what things you can sub out and like working on your business versus working in your business and how and that's like something that was a real transition between having a mature business and having a business that's still growing is that being able to work on your business, and that's the entrepreneurial side of you. So if you're a technician and you have that sort of, I'm a really good photographer and I just shoot photos, but you're not on the how can I grow this into like if your company can't run without you, you don't own a company. You own a job. You own a job. And so, I feel like if I get hit by a car tonight, which I don't hope happens or anything, but I have systems in place where my business can keep going without me. So that's something that's really important, because even when we're hiring, to kind of bring it back to wedding planning, when we're hiring photographers and we're hiring vendors, I always ask, what constitutes, what happens if something happens to this photographer? And even as, coordinators and planners, we have a backup for coordinator for every event. We pay them $25, and if they're on call until 11 a.m. So if someone calls out and can't make it to the event, it costs me $25. But if someone if something happened, they can't. I don't ever have to say to the client, "Well, what happened was," like I don't ever have to do that. What happened was she was supposed to come, but then she didn't.
I could get a number 9
for $25. That's like you can't beat that.
That's brilliant.
That person got paid $25 to do nothing, or they got paid for the entire day, which was cool.
Right. That's awesome. This has been amazing. Yeah, I'm so happy we did this. This place is amazing. I'm really excited to see what you do with it. I really enjoyed our conversation. Thank you so much for being on.
Thank you so much for the pizza.
Find out more about you.
Social media, all that stuff.
Yeah. Oh yeah, all the fun stuff. So it's at KMT Event Group right now. The KMT Collection showroom grand opening is March 16th. We're doing a vendor meet and greet, VIPs only, on March 15th from 4 to 7. But the KMT Collection website will be live hopefully in the next week or so. But for now, you can stay up to date on all the fun stuff at KMT Event Group, KMTEventGroup.com, and then obviously we're a Wedding Wire and the Knot and all that fun stuff as well. But always under that KMT Event Group name.
Amazing.
Thank you so much. This has been an amazing night.
Thank you.
We definitely have to come back.
You just better.
I'm just saying.
I'm just saying you just better. So we got so many more cute.
Well, you just might get to see our first mini doc.
Ooh, right here
in this here place.
We do.
Yeah.
All right.
Is that it?
Crashers.
Hands in.
Ted, we don't do that.
Never.
Kami pati